wanted to talk about, this is kind of an eclectic little class, but I was trying to think of a couple years ago, like some conversations that I hear all the time and that you get better at when you're prepared and when you've been in business for years. Because even when you've been in business for 15 years, you're still going to have people who, like Peggy, like you have something happens, you're like, oh my God, like I was not prepared for them to have this happen to me. So at least with the ones that you get more often, you can be prepared for them. So I wanted to kind of talk through the kind of situations that happen and give you some advice on them. So I don't think we're going to be here for absolutely not the whole hour, but the few things that overarching you have to remember are to always just be a really good listener. I am somebody who talks a lot, and I had to learn. I've taken so many communication classes. I've had so many recordings that I've had to listen to in classes, like they record you and then you have to listen to yourself and how you did. I've had jobs where, as a manager, even in a resort office, where my manager would sit and critique me from the other room when I was talking to customers. Like afterwards, he'd be like, you know, your body language, like, so I've been through all of it. So I could give some tips, but the overarching thing I wanted to say is you have to listen. You have to, if you're somebody who likes to talk, you have to stop and you have to be thoughtful about just paying attention to what somebody is saying. Like I'm someone who's terrible at names. So when somebody comes in and I have my clipboard, I've learned over the years to, hi, I'm Heather, how are you? And oh, I'm John, and this is Peggy. I write it down as I'm saying, that's so nice to meet you, because I go on to the next thing and forget what they just told me, and I just don't remember.
It's freezing, so.
Well, oh, I'm freezing? Is it freezing for you, Peggy Lou?
I'm fine. I think
if you want to come on in here, Emmy, you could totally come in the room. It might be your Zoom. Here, hold on, I'm gonna get Emmy in here. It'll be so awkward having you in. Don't worry about it. So I'll be like talking to the Zoom.
So annoying.
No, don't be. You're fine. It's just Zoom stuff. Okay. So, oh,
let me get rid of this.
Hold on. So you have to listen and be super thoughtful about what the person's saying. Just like be very intentional about soaking it all in. And really, if you're a note taker, take notes, because I learn by taking notes. I can't hear what you're saying until I see it on a piece of paper a lot of times. That's just how I focus. So be really thoughtful, ask a ton of questions, and just let the conversation go from one thing. And then, well, that you have to kind of think like a journalist, like, okay, you told me that, well, what about this? Like you just keep asking a ton of questions. And then also another thing I learned in my classes is that the more you're taking notes, you are delaying a response. So if you get somebody who's asking you a really hard to answer question, if you are just pausing to take a note, that allows your head to go, oh my God, what the hell am I going to say back? You know what I mean? So it's a delayed response thing. So I have this little chart, and you don't have to look at it, but I wanted to show you. Let's see. So this is what you have to do. When you are new in real estate, you have no confidence. Even if you've had 100 jobs before, you're not going to be confident in what you're saying about real estate. So the way you get it is both, the way you build confidence is by the knowledge you're getting. So the more and more you learn, you're just going to be able to, oh, septics, yeah, I did that last week. So this is how it works at San Juan Basin, or whatever it is. You just have more knowledge. So you can pull from the knowledge you're starting to learn, but then you're adding experience to that. So it's like the knowledge you're learning by book reading or experience from that kind of thing, and the experience in the field. But the experience in the field doesn't have to be from your experience. When you go to office meetings, when you are just listening to people in the office, all the time, when I'm in these classes, when I'm talking to customers, I am always pulling from other people's stories. I told a story about this huge fraud thing that happened. And so if I happen to, this was yesterday in the office meeting, and it was like this $3 million deal, and it ended up being a fraudulent buyer after 6 months. So if I was in front of a seller and they're telling me, well, we got this offer and we don't have any earnest money, I don't care, I just want to accept it. Like, let's slow down. So there's this story I heard, and this is kind of what happened. So it is totally okay if it is not your experience. Like I have said, when I started working with people on the, what would it be say? On, oh, okay, when they're doing a buyer's agency and it says, you will pay me whether you buy a for sale by owner or you don't buy a for sale by owner. Maybe it's not that conversation. Think about like if you're doing a contract to buy and sell, and and you're on the buyer side and they're putting $10,000 earnest money, and this is like all the money they own in their bank account. I could say very well for 10 years, I could say, I have never lost a buyer's earnest money. And they're like, oh, okay. I will tell you about those deadlines. We are going to get at it. But then like I did have a buyer who lost their earnest money, and it was an attorney because they thought they knew better than me and they wanted to like rewrite the contract. So if you can say that, maybe this is your first offer, and the person's scared to leave their earnest money and you've never had an offer before, so you can't say that, but you say, look, in all the years, it is extremely rare for a buyer to lose their earnest money. You just have to get out. You just have to get out of the contract by the right date. You could even say, my manager said in all her 15 years, she had never lost a person's earnest money. It just doesn't happen that often. So you can just pull from somebody else. It doesn't have to be your experience that you're pulling from, and it won't be for a long time. And hopefully it will never be, because you won't have bad experiences to have to pull from, because you're going to learn how to do it the right way. So here's the first conversation that I hear so often, and it drives you nuts. It's the kind of thing that you want to tell other realtors about, like, oh my God, you won't believe what just happened the other day. You're in a listing appointment, and you're getting the listing, and what the price should be, but you want to talk to them because it's the seller's decision. And they say, I know you're saying 300, but my mom said, or my brother told me, my uncle told me that I'm really going to set it for 400. Because if we set it for 300, we're going to get like 250. But if we set it for 400, so they're just like not listening to you at all. And you have all the comps, you have all the like explanation. You might have been in business for 15 years, but they don't listen to you. They're listening to their brother. So here are some things you can say back. So someone else is advising this person on what they should be doing in the contract. And then you can say back, oh, just take that second, like just take a second to mellow, because like I get my hackles up and it's like visual. So I had to learn to get kind of humble and say, oh, that's really interesting. What market are they experienced in? Shuts them down. Like, are they a realtor? Like, are they in Denver? Are they here? They're not. They're probably in Dallas or somewhere else, like has nothing to do with our market. So just saying that makes them do a mental check, like, oh, it's over in Ohio, like it just shuts them down. Here's some other things you can say. So, what market do they have experience in? Oh, they're a realtor. They own their own company in Dallas. You say, I bet that's the case. Here's what's usual in Durango. So then again, you're setting like it. I don't care if you bought or sold 6 houses. It's not Durango. This is the way we do things. Like one thing that's common in Durango, and I have no idea, Peggy Lou, if it's common in your area too. In Durango, if you overprice a house, you will not get an offer most of the time, almost all the time. Maybe in the wacky market we will. You have to have it kind of in the range. And then someone's going to make an offer. And then usually you kind of meet in the middle, like in a normal market, not now, but in a normal market, that's where it is. It's like, you don't want to offend the person. You kind of come in close, because whatever they priced at has to be right. What happens is if you have it too high, the buyer is like, even if the buyer's not from Durango, this is kind of how they act if they're with the right realtor, and they'll be like, oh, they're asking 400. It's really worth 350. Good luck to them. I bet they'll get 400. We'll go look for another home. They don't write the offer that's lower based on what they think, because are they embarrassed? Are they like, they don't want to offend someone? Like they don't do it. But as soon as it gets down to a reasonable range, they're like, oh, look, okay, now I can do it. Maybe it's 20,000 off or something. So but what also happens is if that person comes from, there's places in Texas and Oklahoma. I definitely know like certain places in Texas, not like the big cities. And then Oklahoma is another state where their market, they offer, you have it listed at 400, it's worth 400. They'll offer 350 to start. And they expect you to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth until it's like 390, right? Like, why not just offer 387 and then it'll come up to 390? Like that's traditionally how we do it. But you have to be able to talk to that person and say, okay, I know your uncle told you that you really should come in at 350, but if you do that, this is the little old lady that has owned her house for 40 years. You put that offer in front of her, you are going to offend her so badly, you are never getting a deal together. So you have to be able to say, like with confidence, even if you don't have it yet, to understand, like, you are not going to get this together if you come in at 350. Oh, what market do you have experience in today? I bet that's the case, but here's what usually happens here. You know, you make an offer, but you want it to sound good. Like, here's what I actually do tell people about making an offer. It's at 400. If you put a 9 next to that number, like 390, you have a better chance of getting it together, even if all you're coming up to is 391. Like, maybe that's where you want to come in so that you get it together at 391. If you put an 8 in front of it, 389.9 even, it just doesn't sound as good to that buyer. So you want to, like, think about what, it's not a used car kind of lot. You're trying to think of, like, what would be rude and what won't be rude to the average seller. So you have to put all that thought into it. And the better you get at negotiating, you'll know that. But you smack a 375 in front of them. Like, you have people that say, oh, I want to offer 389. I'm like, just raise it to 390. Believe me, it'll just mean more, because they'll see the 9 and think, oh, okay, it's not that far off. You put 375, 350 in front of them, that person's going to go, no, I'm not even lowering it $500, where you might have gotten $9,000 off if you did it the right way. So there's all sorts of tricks like that, but you just be really careful about just, I can't, their mom's in real estate somewhere else, and maybe it's the only kid that they have, it's the son, and he's in your office going, no, my mom told me to do it this way. You just have to be, maybe not, even if you don't have the confidence, just don't be afraid, because that person will be better served if you actually have the ability to communicate with them. This works for days on the market. So if someone says, oh, that's been on the market forever and it's been like 14 days, like, so yes, trying to explain, look, our average days on the market here, let me tell you how it works. Writing a low ball or not taking an offer. Oh my God, that's another one we could talk about. Do you have any questions about that particular situation? Otherwise, here's another one. The seller doesn't want to take the offer. Like, it's priced right, and you know this is a really difficult one to sell, and they just don't want to take the offer. So they want to wait. Let's just see if anything else comes along. So here's a response that really works. I completely understand that you want to get every penny from the sale. It is natural for you to feel that way. In my experience, what happens is if we don't get an offer, a seller like yourself will come back to me in 2 weeks and say, well, we didn't get another offer. Could you go back to that buyer and see if they're still interested in making an offer? No, they put another house under contract. They're not coming back. This is it. Like, you've got them now, you've got to act. And the other thing is that I explained to the seller is that the buyer is going to move on emotionally from this house. If you say no to them, they have to get over it. They go, it wasn't the house for us. It wasn't meant to be. I'm going to move on. And so when you put a house on the market, you get this all the time where someone says, you underpriced my home. Like, we got all these offers. It's like, no, I perfectly priced your home. That's why we have so much interest. In that first couple of days, you're going to get it. Luxury might be a little different. It might take people a while to be, they're in a different space where they're excited about it, but they're not going to, like, jump in their car and go driving up to Durango to look at it. So when something goes on the market, if you've done it right, you have all the marketing ready, the pictures are beautiful, you have the prices right, you're going to get that feeling. I'm the same way. I totally act this way. If I see something on the market that I want to buy, not like I go around buying properties all the time, but I get so excited in those first couple of days. I'm like, oh my God, I got to get my offer in. I have to buy this house right now, because there's like, oh my gosh, somebody else is going to get it. But if a couple days goes by and no one makes an offer, a week goes by, you'll be like, oh, it'll be there. Even if it's not going to be there, they just feel like, I'm not worried about it. Like, if you don't price that house right, then you're going to have that like 4 weeks, and you might get some 8 showings, 10, 12 showings, but you're not going to get that offer. And then you reduce the price to where it should have been, and nobody cares. It's just the way emotions work. So when you're explaining it to people, to just be able to say, when you put your house on the market, like, you know, your house is on the market now, you got an offer in, and this is the time that you have created anxiety and pressure for that buyer to make their best offer they're going to make right now. So this happens a lot where someone waits and then the seller ends up selling for less money than they would have because the excitement is gone. And you really should, the first offer is usually the best. There's a lady, Tierney Scahill, and she works at well, she doesn't anymore. She was at Remax for a long time, but she worked with me for a short time when I was a new agent, and she explained that to me. She said, You just have to, the first offer, even if it isn't what you were thinking it was going to be, is probably the best offer you're going to get. It's just true, emotionally. But if you feel like that seller is being stubborn and they just don't want to take it, that's kind of the language you could use that would help you. Any questions about that? Okay, here's another one. What if you got a low ball? Okay. What about somebody that wants to write a low ball? So somebody comes in, oh God, this happens on floor all the time. You don't know the person at all. And they're like, really like that house. It's listed at 500. How about shoot them an offer for 400? I'll see if they take it. I was like, you know what market we're in? Like, we're in Durango. This is not going to happen. So, and again, they said, yeah, this is what my brother, uncle, mom thinks I should do. If you know the person's needs because you've done a good interview with them and you've asked them a ton of questions, you've been a good listener, you've taken a lot of notes, you could say, I understand that your brother thinks that you should write this offer for 300, but let's talk about your goals. You told me you need to be in a house in 40 days. So if you upset the seller, what happens when you upset the seller and they don't want to negotiate with you at all? If you can't find another home that works with you, would you be able to rent for a long time? Oh my God, does that work? Because then they start thinking, what do you mean? There's not going to be another house that comes up? Like, how bad is it out there? So like, you're trying to put into their head, what is your plan B? If you don't get this house and you lowball them, let's just talk about that before we do that. Could you rent for a while? Usually that works. It also works if you rent it for a while. Here's another way to say it. Okay, so or an additional thing. What happens if you upset the seller and they won't negotiate with you? If you can't find another home that works for you, could you rent for a while? It's easy for your brother or me to give you advice, but they aren't in your shoes. So you give them scenarios. Let's see, we could come in here, we could do this. And so as long as you're a buyer's agent, you have the ability to kind of help them with where they should come in a better way. You're never giving someone a price. You're giving them a range. Like, you know, if you come in 387, 389, somewhere around there, it's better than if you're coming in at 375. Like, you're kind of giving them a range. It's always their choice what they want to do. But let them be the ones to make the decision. That's super important. What your job isn't to tell them exactly what they're supposed to be doing. Even in a multiple offer situation, you give them tons of scenarios. Okay, we could make it so that you can't object on inspections. You can only bail, so we still want the inspection clause, but you can't get out of it. Or what if you came in a little higher, or you upped your earnest money, because that doesn't cost you anything really, because you're going to get it back if you bail. What if you decide you don't need to get a whole survey, you just need to get this one thing checked on? What if this? So you give them all the scenarios and say, what do you want to do? So your job is to think of all the like problem solving that you could do ahead of time. Like, how could I smooth this out? What will probably happen if I put a low ball in? You try to find out who's the seller. Like, is it some investor? They don't care. If you put a low ball in, they're probably not going to be as offended as if it is. I keep mentioning the little old lady, but you know the score. Like, you go in that 70s home and nothing's ever been changed. The family portraits are on the wall. They have lived there forever. You are totally going to offend them. But then again, if there's no furniture in there, it's been vacant for a long time, they might need to move quickly, Think of the things that could happen and smooth out what does happen by just helping the buyer. Here's some other tips that I learned over the years. Never say, I think. It's not strong enough. I think. You say, if they say, what do you think? Which happens all the time. You could say, based on the feedback. How's that? Like, your house smells like cat pee. They say, what do you think about the smell? Do you think it's bad? I think it smells terrible. No, you say, based on the feedback, we should probably clean the carpets, or we should probably lower the price to somewhere. And I think if you want to get an effect, you're going to have to lower it at least this much. Or based on what the research says. That doesn't slide off the tongue. I don't know that I ever said that. I'm more like based on the feedback, or research would be more like we're trying to find a price. I think feedback could be that I walked around the office and talked to a few people about, I didn't tell them about your house in general, but just about the fact that it was in this situation. What did they think? And based on the research I did, I guess you could use that. But feedback always works better because it's coming from someone else. It doesn't offend them. You're not going to lose the listing like you did if sometimes you have a piece of crap listing and they don't want to get it fixed. And if you give them the feedback, and I love if you get along with other agents and you have that listing and you put it out there and you're so embarrassed by it, say, let's just get some showings. And you get that, you can call the agent who showed it, and before they give feedback and say, hey, I'm letting you know, I know you're not interested in the property, but I'm really trying to work on them on the carpet. If you noticed it as well, could you please put it in the feedback? Oh my God, it works like a charm. It helps you if you get along with other agents, because then they feel like they're on your team and they're helping you somehow. And like, oh, okay, I'm going to help Emmy out. I'm going to get this done. Give them options. Always do your homework. The more time you spend trying to craft the price that it should be, the more strong you can be in your opinion. Because if you did a really good job with like, I know we need to be under 400. We cannot list this house for 450. We're never going to get an offer. The stronger you feel about that, because you've done the research, the more you are going to feel inside like, I did the research. Why aren't they listening to me? You will come across better than if you just aren't sure. Because that's what happens to me. If they throw me for a loop, because let's say I'm one of those people, or I need to go do research before I price a home. But sometimes you get caught where they say, just give me a price. What do you think? And then I'm like, God, I haven't sat down, I'm thinking $399. And they go, well, no, you don't know about this other room. And I know it should be 450. And you're going, well, maybe they're right, because I haven't really looked at the comps. That's when I feel uncomfortable. But if I sat down and did that research, I could come there and go, you can't do it. You can't do it. Let's look at the comps together. I went in this house and this house was this price. So those are some other things. And again, break in if there's anything that I'm saying that doesn't make sense. Peggy Lou, you good?
Yeah, the feedback thing worked really well. Anytime realtors showed this house that I had, because it was a fixer upper, she hadn't taken care of it. And then I would forward that feedback to her.
And be
then
careful on the other side. So if you're on the buyer side, know that anything you write in there is going to go right to the seller. So
right.
that's great.
Because
That's
then
great.
she could see that people were complaining about the landscaping not being taken care of and stuff, so that she knew that she was going to have to take something less probably.
Right. Yeah. Here's one last one that I have. Okay. I just didn't know this was a thing, but I think there are some of us that, I think everyone on this call is probably fine, but there are people out there that don't understand how they are seen in the world. And in that way, it's like, you can have a super busy day and you are giving off like the worst vibes in the world because you are busy and you are stressed. I just had this with the head of our association yesterday. We sent her this email, the Wells Group, and my biggest competitor and I are trying to get this class together. And we just said, hey, we need to schedule this at this week. What works for you? And it was this email back that you could tell, like, she's totally overwhelmed. She doesn't want to think about it. And she doesn't know why she's doing this to help us. And I'm like, do you realize, like, you are giving off bad vibes in this email? And we are just totally, like, it ended up being a phone call later that we were like, oh my God, we were not trying to offend her. So make sure that as overwhelmed as you feel, because you just got a seller that was yelling at you, and then this buyer, you got to go do this showing. And they just added, like, I had Tina Miley was in the office this morning and she said, I thought I was just driving to Pagosa Springs. They literally walked in and said, I have these 5 other homes I want you to show. And it was going to take her in 3-4 more hours than she was expecting. So you're like, and then let's say at the same time, you got a phone call that a contract fell out, like the buyer bailed and you have the seller and you're feeling that, or the seller is angry because a door was left open and their cat got out, right? And that happened yesterday, and now they're calling because they want to talk about it again, and they've been stewing about it all night, and they just want to tell you how they feel. Or they got some really bad news and they got an email about it. Let's say they got an email about it, but you haven't had a chance to talk yet. But you're busy because you got to go show that house in Pagosa and Forest Lakes, and you got to run all over, and so they're calling and you go, okay, I'm really busy. Can I call you later? Dude, like, what? No, you don't do that. So if you have to let it go to voicemail, and because you're like in the middle of something and you realistically, like, you're in the bank teller line and they're saying, hello, or McDonald's or whatever, and you get this call, can I call you back? Like, don't do it, because it makes it seem like you're way too important for them, or you don't have the time for them. They've been crying or angry all night. So the better way to handle it is to do the text back and just saying, I have really bad service right now. Could I call you back ASAP? big capital letters. I will call you back ASAP when I get into range. That's a really good way to do it. I'm on a showing right now and I will call you back ASAP when I drop these people off. Even if you think something is super obvious, like I told them I'm going to be gone all day. I have this buyer that came into town. I told them that I was going to be busy in the email that said, I am so sorry. This fell out of contract. Let's talk tomorrow. I happen to be with a buyer from 9 to 3 and I'm not going to be anywhere near. And they're trying to call you and you're like, I told you I'm not available. Like it's not obvious to them. They need to talk to you. So just make sure you are not that person. I can't tell you as a manager how many complaints I've gotten about agents who they don't want it, that like something fell out of contract and someone texts them to say, sorry, the buyer bailed. And then they don't pick up their phone when the person calls, like, oh my God, it's just terrible customer service. They're not here anymore. And there have been multiple people. So it's not just like that it happened to be one person. I don't know if it's a generational thing because some people really like to just text, but you need to hear someone's voice when you're talking about like, you know, deaths and houses and financial and like stress and moving, like you need to hear somebody's voice. And so if you have bad news, the only other point on that is, I am someone who wants to, like, if I know bad news, I want the other person to know right away. I don't want to be holding on to something for them. I feel like, oh my God, I got to tell them right away. The buyer bailed and all that. I don't know what to do. Like, you got to take a deep breath. And I learned this from Gina Piccoli. She was the owner here. And she said, if you have really bad news and it is 8 o'clock at night, do not call and ruin that person's night. Because what is it going to do if you call them at 7:30 in the morning when they're on their way to work, they got their kids off to school, like it's all cool. Like, okay, oh, that sucks. Like, we'll move on. We'll figure it out. Okay, I got to get to work. We'll think about this later. They're busy, so they're at work and they got stuff to do. You know, it's better than calling late at night and giving someone bad news. And I felt terrible about it the first time I said it. I was like, oh, I got to go to sleep knowing they have no buyer. And I haven't told them yet. But as I started using that, oh my God, so much better. So you don't have to ruin someone's night. But if it's like you got under contract, there are certain things in a contract you have to tell by law. Like, yeah, if the buyer accepted the offer, they have a counter offer, even if it's just a text, hey, they just countered at 370. I'm on a showing. I'll send it to you right away. Those kind of things need to be communicated. I'm talking about like terrible, tragic news. Like, don't go ruin somebody's night. So, but that's it. Those are the ones that I hear more often than anything else. Do you have other situations you've had or things that you've learned that are tricks to you? Oh my God, restaurant industry, the things people probably say about food, you know?
Well, I just feel like it's being, you know, like you said, taking a deep breath and not, it's controlling your emotions. I think that's one thing that I notice in real estate is that people get all aflutter.
Yep.
I think controlling your emotions and being able to speak to someone, whether it's good news or bad news, with a clear head, that is the same. It's consistent along, you know, whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, not letting someone else's, especially if someone's mean to you too.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, take a deep breath, control your emotions. You can't control theirs, but you can
Nope.
control yours, you know.
I've had some people, I remember there's a owner of another brokerage that was upset at me for just ridiculousness. And he came up to me in a public space after the meeting and he was red and he was shaking and he was like pointing his finger and he got real close to my face. And I remember I knew enough. I think I was just shocked by the whole situation, but I was able to just step back and say, you need to calm down. I'm leaving. Like I'm getting out of here and I'm going to get out of this. But yeah, there are a lot of realtors like that they get so emotional about things. And it's okay. You can totally get emotional at home, in the office, like come steam off to your manager. Like that's okay, but just not in front of your client, even if they're giving you some really bad aggravation. I took a class with the Colorado Association of Realtors. If you guys ever go into leadership or you just go to it doesn't even have to be leadership. It could be like a Colorado Association of Realtors or whatever your Peggy, though you're going to another association. Going to like a state kind of run thing, event, right? They had this class in public speaking and what they did is they were teaching, it was mostly for association leaders. And I happened to be going up in the ranks of the association at the time. They put a microphone in front of your face and they made something up on the spot in front of a TV camera. So you could see how you reacted. And then you had to be able to speak back to it after the class. And then you'd have to watch the video and it would be like, how do you feel about the allegation that there was a sexual assault or like something awful, you know? And you were like, you didn't know this had happened in your association or that somebody stole money from, you know, the kids organization or, you know, something terrible. And you had to be able to like react in a way that wasn't going to be viral on Twitter later, right? So what I always learned is like, if someone catches you off guard, to be able to, you just said it, taking the deep breath, pausing, and to be able to respond. And whenever you can delay an answer because you need more information to find out more, you are walking to the association meeting and you like did not know what the news was. And here's this news person, to be able to just say, hey, I need more information. I would love to talk to you about this. Could you give me, can I set a time with you that I can talk to you in 45 minutes? When do you need the interview by so that you can go live or whatever you need? Like, let's say it's like they want to write an article or they want to have, you're trying to be like helpful to that person and say, right now I need more information and I'd love to have an interview with you about this. And you're doing the like, you know, you're focused on them and you're nodding and those sort of things. So delaying the response and being able to like get more information. It's the same with a seller. You know, they're screaming at you on the phone, the cat got out, and like, I am so sorry this happened to you. I need more information. Let me call the other agent and see what happened. And I will get in my car and we will go try to find your cat. You know, those kind of things, instead of be like, whoa, dude, like cat got out. I don't know. What am I supposed to tell you? So I've had people definitely have had, you know, employees or people in the office who have said things back to people who are upset that are like, I don't know what to tell you. And it's like, that's not helpful at all. So anything else that you can think of that you have a question about, Peggy, Lou, Hazel, Jackie? Otherwise, that was an easy one.